Alright, so in this video, we're going to talk about if statements with multiple conditions. And we'll get to different scenarios, so hopefully it covers whatever it is you're trying to do. And we'll talk about if functions, and function, or function. We'll talk about ifs function. We'll talk about different cases of using those. There are some cases when you might want to do a lookup instead of if statements. And I just made a video recently about if statements from hell. You might want to watch that video just to have better understanding how to approach those things. But in this particular thing, we're going to stick to if statements. So if we have a basic if statement, let's say we have cost of goods sold and we have sales. Now we want to only calculate profit when we do have cost of goods sold. You can see like some of these don't have cost of goods sold. Our regular if statement would be if this cost of goods sold is not equal to blank, double quotes. You could use is blank function or whatever it is you like to use. I'm just going to stick with double quotes here. Then we can, at this point, do this minus this. Sales minus cost of goods. In all the other cases, I could just leave it blank. So double quotes, or in Google Sheets, you can actually just leave this blank like this. That would work too. But we're going to make this compatible both for Excel and Google Sheets today. So whichever one you use, you should be fine. So I'm going to hit enter. At this point, if I just drag this formula down, as you can see, for the ones that don't have cost of goods sold, we get a blank. For the rest, we basically get some sort of number. Now that was our basic if statement with a single condition. Now, what if we want to do this calculation only when the status here is complete? So right now we do these for pretty much all of them, even for the ones that are like canceled. So let's say we only want to do this calculation when status is complete, but we also want to make sure that this cost of goods sold is not blank like we did before. So the way we would do something like this is by using AND function. And what AND function allows you to do is to basically chain multiple logical tests and get a result out of it. So what I would do here, instead of this single logical test that I've done here, I would just put this inside of a function AND, like so. I'm going to close parentheses over here. Basically, this logical test is now inside of this AND function. As of right now, I just have the same single logical test. So this is going to work exactly the same way if I just hit enter and drag it down. But now what we can do, we can go inside of this AND function, do a comma, and do another logical test. So what I can do, I can check if this D2 cell over here equals complete. So now what we're saying is that we want both of these conditions to be met. We want this to not be blank, and at the same time, we want this to be complete. And only if both of these are true, we would like to do this calculation. So let's just hit enter and drag this down so we can see what happens here. And as you can see, we do our calculation now only in cases when it's complete. And at the same time, we want to make sure there is some sort of cost of goods sold. So for example, for this one, that's complete, but there's no cost of goods sold. We're going to see that this is still blank. So the idea of AND function is that you basically pass multiple comma-separated logical tests, and you can keep adding more logical tests. So I can do another comma here and do more logical tests. What it's going to make sure is that all of these tests must be true for the entire result to be true. So just to show you an example of another condition here, I could go and do a comma. And let's say we only want to do this calculation when we are in this main office. So I can say if this G2 equals, now again in quotes, main office. Let's make sure we add a space here. Then let's do that calculation. So now I have 3 conditions here, and all of them must be met. So if I drag this down, you'll see that only when it's main office and it's complete, and at the same time, there is some sort of cost of goods sold, then we do this calculation. And you could do any sort of logical test here. So if you want to watch more about logical tests, I have separate videos about just logical tests. So you can check those videos to see how to do this comparison against numbers, against dates, against other type of data. Right now, we're just going to stick with this. So let's just go back to our previous example here when we had just complete and it's not blank case. And then I'm going to drag it down. Now, to give you another common case of using this, use AND when you want to check if something is between two numbers. So for example, I can do an AND function here. Let's make sure I spell it right. And then I can check if this sales amount is greater than 6,000. And then I can do a comma and I can check if that same sales amount is less than 7,000. So basically I'm checking if this number is between 6 and 7,000. 6,000 and 7,000 not included. If you wanted to include those, you would do equal to, like so. Let's actually include them like this. So now we're going to check if this number is between 6 and 7,000 by doing this. So if I drag this down, we will do that calculation only for sales where the sales amount is between 6 and 7,000. Now next, let's try to cover OR function. So this was AND function. Let's try to do something with OR function. I'm going to get rid of this. So the way you write OR function is pretty much the same you write AND function, but logically, instead of saying all of them must be true, you're saying only one of them has to be true. For instance, say I want to do this calculation, this sales minus cost of goods sold, when status is complete or status is pending. So what I would do my if statement, and in my if statement, in my logical test, I would do OR function, and in my OR function, again, I can do multiple comma separated conditions. So I can check if this status equals complete. And by the way, this is not case sensitive, so I can do this, or I'm going to click on that same cell, or that status equals pending. Close parentheses for my OR function. Obviously, you can do comma and do more conditions if you wanted to. Right now, I'm just going to do 2. So this will close now our OR statement. I'm going to do comma after that. So what do we want to happen if this is true? So if it's complete or it's pending, we would like to do that calculation sales minus cost of goods sold, comma. In all the other cases, I'm going to do double quotes, meaning leave it empty. So if I'd enter and we drag this down, you're going to see that every case when it's complete or it's pending, we do have that calculation done. But for example, see, these are canceled. We do not include those in this calculation. So that's an example of your OR statement. So again, the idea of OR statement, if you want just one of the conditions to be true, then you use OR statement. So now let's get to a little different multiple condition cases. So let's say we want to do the sales minus cost of goods sold when the status is complete, but when the status is pending, we want to leave that calculation empty. And when it's canceled, we want to say that basically our profit is 0. Now we have multiple statements like this. And for these, it's different because we don't check both of the statements at the same time. What we're going to do, we're going to check one. And if it's true, we're going to react to it. If it's not true, we're going to check another thing and we're going to react to it. Unlike the previous ones, when I was checking for 2 things or 3 things to be true at the same time. So here we can use ifs function. So for ifs function, you can do multiple conditions. And what you do here for the first condition, I'm just going to check if the status is complete, comma. Then in those cases, I just want to do my sales minus cost of goods sold, that calculation, comma. Now, the next case I'm going to do when that status equals, say, pending. So when it's pending status, I just want to leave it empty. So I'm going to do double quotes, comma. And the next one, I'm going to check if that status is canceled. So in cases when it's canceled, comma, I want to make sure it's 0. So basically with its if statement, you do condition and what should happen if that's true. Condition and what should happen if that's true. And we can keep going for as many times as we like. And then once we're done, we're going to close parentheses, hit enter. And then if I drag it down, you'll see that for cases when it's complete, I do this calculation. When it's canceled, we just basically put 0. And in cases when it's pending, right here, we just leave it blank. So that would be our now multiple conditions. But again, we don't check for 2 things at the same time. Now, sometimes you could have two things at the same time happening here within your multiple cases that you check. So what I mean by that, if I go here, previously what I did, I only wanted to do this calculation when this is complete. And at the same time, we have some sort of cost of goods sold. So right now, I don't do that. So even if I don't have cost of goods sold, let's try to find an example of that. Like here, we still do this math and we still put this calculation here. So what I can do here, I can do that AND function right here. So I can go back here. Let me clear all of this. So in my if statement, I can still use that AND function and I can check if it's complete, comma, and at the same time, this cost of goods sold is not equal to blank, close parentheses for this AND function. So when both of these are true, comma, we basically want to do our sales minus cost of goods sold calculation to calculate our profit, comma. Now I can still do the rest of my conditions like I used to do before. So I'm going to check if this status equals pending, comma. Then in cases of pending, we just want to leave it blank. So I'm going to do this. And we could keep going to the next condition. So I can do another comma, for example, and I can say if it equals canceled, then it's going to be 0, like so. So right now, I'm going to show you what happens. I'm going to close parentheses. So again, I did now 3 conditions inside of my if statement, even though my first condition was 2 things at the same time. Drag this down. And you'll see that I got these totals here when it's complete and there is some sort of cost of goods sold. When it's canceled, we get a 0. When it's pending, we get a blank. But this one is a case that we didn't actually cover, which is a case when it's complete and then this is blank. And the thing about if statement is that if statement doesn't have else condition in it by default. So it's a condition and what should happen. Condition, what should happen. Condition, what should happen. Depending on how you want to handle this. So let's say in all the other cases, we just want to say like check this result, or maybe we just want to leave it blank or something like that. So let's do that else statement now. How do you do an else statement? Well, the way this works, you do a condition that's going to give you true or false. And if it's true, it's going to do this condition. If it's false, it's going to go check the next logical test. If this next logical test is true, then it would do this. But if it's false, then it's going to go and check our next statement again. Now, what we can do now, when we do comma, we need to now do another logical test at this point. I don't really want to check for a condition now, however. I just want to say in all the other cases. So the way you can do that is by simply hard coding your last logical test as true, like so, and then say what should happen in those cases. And I can just say check this. And that would be my else statement. So the last one would be true with your basically all the other cases example going here. So if I drag this down now, instead of that NA, it's going to say check this. Now, if you wanted this to be blank, then you would just do this, right? Now, if you have blank cases for, say, like this pending and you have blank for everything else, it kind of defeats the purpose of doing this pending thing. So I can remove this pending out of here too. Because for pending, we'll just say else. So we'll say if it's complete and we do have some sort of cost of goods sold, let's do this sales minus cost of goods sold. If it's canceled, let's put a 0 in there. And in all the other cases, let's just leave it blank. So now I can drag this down and you'll see we get this. And again, the key thing here is to understand that you use something like ifs if you check for a condition and based on this condition, you do some sort of result. And then you check for our next condition and based on that condition, you do some sort of result. However, if you have 2 conditions that you check at the same time, like over here, then you're going to use your AND or functions to handle something like that. Now, the issue with these AND and OR functions is that they cannot handle array calculations. So if you wanted to do some sort of array using and or, it's simply just not going to work. So for example, if I delete all of these and I try to create an array calculation here, so I'm going to go from D2 through, let's say, D16, and then we're going to do from E2 through E16, and F2 through F16. Let's make sure we put an E here. And basically just convert all of these to ranges. So if I do Control-Shift-Enter or Command-Shift-Enter to do this as an array formula, this is not going to work. And the reason it's not going to work is because AND function or functions, they do not handle arrays. So what can we do instead of doing this AND function? So I'm just going to leave this like this. We're going to come back and replace this AND function in a second. And what we can do, we can basically just use binary logic here to get this to work. So with AND function, basically, if we do AND, we check if this equals complete. And then we check if this is not equal to blank. I'm not going to drag it down. Now, what we could do here, we could just do some calculation in a different way. We could check if this equals complete. And you can see that gives me that true right now. But I also want to make sure that at the same time, this cost of goods sold is not blank, right? So we can check in this next cell if this is not equal to blank. And again, now this is true and this is true. So both of these things are true in this particular line. Now, if I drag this AND formula down, so we can see what the results should have been. So this is what we're going to get. Now, what we can do, we can basically just multiply these two together. So what I can do here, I can go back to this, and I can take this and multiply it by this calculation. So I'm going to copy that calculation without equal sign, go here, and basically just multiply it by this. So right now we get order of operation problem here because I need to wrap my first here in parentheses and the second calculation in parentheses. So it knows what to do first and what to do second here. So I'm going to do this and also do this like so. And if I drag this down, I can delete this. You'll see that this is going to act very similar to this AND function right here. So you can see in cases of trues, I get ones, and in cases of false, I get a 0. So what happens when we multiply true and true, it acts as two ones, so we get a 1. But if it's true and false, then it's 1 and 0 multiplied together, we get a 0. And if statements basically will treat ones as trues and zeros as falses by default. So we don't have to check if it equals 1 or anything. This is similar to doing AND function. So if I copy this without that equal sign, go back to this, and instead of this AND function, so see, I'm going to just grab the whole function, including closing parentheses here. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to paste this new calculation I just did, which is that multiplication calculation. And now I can convert these to a range. I can go 16 and 16. And it's now an array formula. And you can see that it now works as an array formula as well. So if you want to do something similar to an AND function in an array, this is what you do. We basically do this multiplication thing. So if we wanted another AND, you would simply just multiply this by the next logical test and keep multiplying all of them. And that brings me to ORs. So let's say we want to do that OR sort of statement. I'm just going to delete this at this point. Hopefully that's clear by now. And I'm just going to do OR function here. And we could say if this is complete, or that same one, say, is pending, And we have to type this right for this to work. So right now, I'm just going to drag this down to see how this is going to work. And again, the thing with OR function, it doesn't work with arrays. So I couldn't just do the whole column as a range and use an array formula. I would have to just use this row by row sort of calculation. So now let's try to replicate this using regular logical tests. So I'm going to check if this equals complete. And then let's do another one and check if it equals to pending. And just so you can see what's going on here, I'm going to wrap both of this in a function n, so it converts them to zeros and ones instead of trues and falses. So this is basically checks if this is complete within this and function. It's just going to say 1 and 0 instead of trues and falses. So now with OR statement, we're just saying either this or this. So basically we're saying if one of them is good, then we should be good. The way we're going to get to it is by, instead of multiplying, when we multiply 1 times 0, it's going to get us 0. One of them is actually true. I want this to be true. So what we can do, instead of multiplying them, we can add these two together. So if I do this plus this, then 1 plus 0, it's going to get me 1. 1 plus 0 is going to get me 1. When both of them are not true, it's going to get me 0, which is basically false. And even if both of them are true, you're going to get like 2 1s. And that would be still true because any number other than 0 is basically true. So basically what I'll do here, I'll just grab this and go to this one and simply just add this next calculation here, this next logical test. At this point, now this will act as an OR statement. So as you can see, trues are 1s, false is 0, trues are 1, false is 0. And the reason you might want to do this is because this will actually work with your array formulas. So if I go back here and convert this to a range, and I'm going to do Control-Shift-Enter. Now, you don't have to do this if you are using Excel 365, this Control-Shift-Enter part. It's just going to work without doing that Control-Shift-Enter. But here in Google Sheets, I'm actually going to do that. And in older versions of Excel, you would have to do that. But you can see that this works as an array calculation too. So it basically just outputs this whole thing as an array. So if you wanted to do OR, this is what you do. And basically, if you had more conditions, you simply just do plus the next one plus the next one. Obviously, you can now use this inside of your if or ifs statement. Instead of outputting 1s and 0s, you could say, if this is true, I'm going to go here, comma, then we're going to say, great. In all the other cases, let's say we're going to leave it blank, like so. So now if I hit enter, it's an array formula, so it kind of drags down automatically. So now you're going to see that every time it's status, complete, or pending, it's going to say great. In all the other cases, it's blank. So that's your OR statement in array sort of formulas. That should do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.